So wait, when are we recording?
How should we start this?
Are we recording now?
Yeah,
Let's just start.
Okay.
Hey, everybody. I'm Jack.
Hey, and I'm Matt.
Can I hit your hand there? Stop. So, hi guys. It's been a while since we had one of these podcasts.
Yeah.
We had one about a month ago. No, like 3 months ago.
It was 3 months ago?
I don't know how long ago.
It didn't work out.
It was, we were cranky after that. I remember we had gone for a walk that day with my dogs, and about halfway through it started pouring rain. And, like, I don't think I've ever been that wet in my life. That's what she said. We were just sopping wet and we came back, and I was kind of in a pissed off mood at that point. I think you were too a little bit. And, like, it was just like, let's fucking do this thing. And it came out like shit, and we're thinking, like, let's hold off on a little bit, and we'll come back in, and we'll make a fresh one. We'll film it, our own pretty acne color covered faces on the camera, and we'll do it.
Yeah, so here we are.
How you been, man?
I have been incredibly unbusy.
Yes.
And I have been taking photos and trying to do more video stuff. Being a recent graduate, that means you have no job opportunities, even though you thought you would. So I'm doing my own business, and it's Mateo Do My Media at Instagram.
Shameless plug right there.
I want big photos of everything.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow, that was... You're ready to work in the industry. Just like these Oreos that I got here. Let's start plugging away.
I got this Slurpee cup. That's
an official Slurpee cup.
This new chrome enhanced Slurpee cup for all of you to enjoy.
I feel like that's way too fancy to ever actually put that Slurpee shit in there. You ever think about like what that actually is? It's like
it's my mom
sludge.
says it's cough syrup.
What
do you think?
Sense.
Do you think it tastes like cough syrup?
I do. No. I don't actually think it tastes like cough syrup. It tastes like food coloring combined with sugar and like
some kind
horse
of
manure.
Some kind of chemical concoction.
Yeah.
I had the what do they call it? The let's move on. I don't remember actually. The fucking was it Captain Crunch? Is Captain Crunch the berries?
Yeah, I think.
Yeah,
so.
I think it was Captain Crunch, and I remember like I took one sip and it killed me. It was so fucking sweet. You could taste all the chemicals in it. I would stick to Coke Slurpee. Coke Slurpee is the way to go.
I used to get not even the Coke one, but it was like the blue one, whatever blue
raspberry.
Raspberry. I don't even think they had flavors. They were just like colors. They're just like, what does that taste like? Blue.
Yeah, like Gatorade.
Yeah.
Or Kool-Aid.
Yeah, if you ever ask for
blue
flavor,
man.
blue. Here's the flavors: blue, red, and green. It's like those aren't flavors.
Well, you got
it's a fucking color.
I mean, you got to think it doesn't really taste like raspberry, does it?
No, it tastes like raspberry-like flavor. It has like a
That's
a similar
why it's blue.
kind of yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it's like when you would go to the dentist and like they would give you that like filling, and they'd be like, "What kind of artificial flavoring would you like to put on this?" And I'm like, I don't care. Like even when I was a little kid, I'm like, listen, it all tastes like some horrible chemical that you've added this flavoring to. I don't really give a shit. Give me any kind of thing you want.
Did you ever have the gas?
Yes.
That shit, I couldn't handle it. It was like being too drunk and feeling like you're gonna throw up. I didn't like it. It's
not till you get older, when you start doing that stuff for fun, that you realize that it actually is like, wow, I should have gotten cavities all the time when I was a kid.
Well, I had the thing Michael Jackson was on when he died, and when I woke up from it, I actually felt a pretty good high.
What do you mean?
I think it's called a twilight anesthesia. It's like you're conscious, but you don't remember it afterwards.
Because didn't his doctor give him too much of that, and that's why he died?
Yeah, he wasn't there monitoring it. It's one of those things where, like, you know, there should be, like, 4 nurses and a doctor monitoring it.
Yeah.
So it's one of those things where it's like,
I'm sure it had to do with other things, like his fucking face falling off of his face.
Yeah, that's...
I don't think that was the only... I think he was, like, dying for years.
That's what got him into it.
Yeah.
It was like a way to help him sleep, and like he was on a lot of other drugs too for the pain at that point. And then I don't know, after that I think it was an excuse to like change his face, cuz he didn't need it after he got burned.
No,
he still looked good.
Well, I think like once he started turning white, his body, I don't even know, he had some sort of disease or his skin,
Vitiligo.
Yeah, his skin was like it naturally changed to that color. But I think that like his body was just like deteriorating from all that fucking plastic surgery.
Yeah.
I mean, remember when he went to court? This is like a podcast from 2005 right now. Like, let's talk about the Paris Hilton sex tape. No, but like, remember like when he went to court and his nose was like falling off? I'm like, this guy, yeah, he's done. He's gonna be dead in a few years.
Some say, that's why he wore the white glove to cover up his vitiligo. But a lot of people also said that was like very little was changing on his body. And I know people who were born with it, where it just stays like a white patch. And it doesn't look bad at all. Mm-hmm. So what some people were thinking was he just, he overreacted and he bleached his skin. And then he also changed his nose, which, like, his nose was perfectly fine. Yeah. Like, it was a beautiful nose. Now
it was a nose.
Then
Any
it became
nose
a bad
is perfectly fine.
Yeah.
Your nose is fine. You don't need to change your nose unless you specifically have, like, a deviated septum, which is what I had. You don't need to actually get surgery unless, you have a specific problem. I mean, well, that had to do with all the other stuff. I mean, plus there's the whole child molestation thing. Which, which he definitely did. I mean, why people are afraid to say that these days. Whenever anybody talks about Michael Jackson nowadays, they automatically kiss his ass and talk about how big of an inspiration, how great he was, and all this stuff. And it's like, yeah, he's a great musician.
Was he?
I don't know, not really. He wasn't what I was into. I was never like a Michael. Sometimes like if somebody like played like I like Thriller, that album.
Yeah.
I like a couple of his albums, but like, I mean, like I have a feeling like if I was growing up in the '80s, I wouldn't be listening to Michael Jackson. And even so, like I always thought like Prince was way better, like because they were kind of like rivals. I always thought Prince was much more talented. But I remember when he died. Like, there was that huge funeral that they were broadcast on TV with all these, like, legends, like Stevie Wonder and Smokey Robinson. All these people would come out, and they would give all these speeches about MJ and how much of an inspiration he is. And I'm like, yeah, but, like, you're still, like, this thing... whenever I hear about, like, a celebrity scandal, I look at the evidence before fixing my opinion. It's called being, like, a rational adult, which a lot of people don't do anymore. They just automatically are like, guilty! So I try to look at all the evidence, and I looked at, like, all the evidence surrounding him. I legitimately think he did some bad things.
Yeah, I mean, Neverland Ranch was falling apart at that time, and...
It had reconstruction on it.
It did?
Closed for renovation.
Oh, yeah?
No, I don't know.
I don't know what you're saying.
I'm just riffing.
Oh, you're riffing?
Because you're saying it had it was falling apart.
Yeah, it was. It was falling apart. The petting zoo, there was like shit everywhere. I don't know what's going on. There was like the petting zoo there was shit everywhere. Everything was a disaster. He had like a hoarding problem with pieces of like old TV props and things, and he bought things that weren't worth as much as what he bought, and he bought stupid things. He bought memorabilia, he bought art.
Yeah.
And he was going broke. And then to top that off, he was saying, hey, parents, let these kids sleep over with me. And a lot of people will go and say, well, he didn't have a childhood, so he was spending time with these kids like a kid.
Yeah.
But like, come on. I mean, like first of all, that shouldn't be happening. Second of all, why are the parents letting their kids do this? And then those parents use that opportunity to sue him, and it's just like, so you put your kid in danger, and now you're using it as an opportunity to sue him.
Well, first off, like, you raised a good point. Like, talk about the worst parents ever.
Yeah.
Literally the worst parent. What a fucking idiot. If some freak came up to you and was like, hey, I used to be a child star, and now I have a theme park in my backyard. Do you mind if your child sleeps with me for the night, alone, without any other adult supervisors around, and it'll just be other children and me? What kind of a parent would ever say, yes, totally, what's the worst that could happen? Like, those parents are fucking idiots. They should be arrested for child abuse.
Yeah.
Those are idiots. And if he had to honestly pay those parents off, there's probably a reason he had to pay them off. You don't just pay people off if you didn't do anything wrong.
Mm-hmm.
That's why all these arguments are like so like people had the same arguments with Bill O'Reilly. They're like, you don't know that he didn't do what he did. I'm like, I know that he paid $250,000, which is a lot of money to pay if you didn't do anything. And that's money that nobody pays if they didn't do anything. People are fucking guilty, you know?
I don't know what did Bill O'Reilly
he was like sexually harassing people at Fox News for years, and like he was like a creep and a perv, and like so eventually they sued him, and it was very hush though, like this was years before the thing came out, and Fox News worked very hard to keep it on the surface, and he paid a total of $250,000, and it's like, if you pay that money, you're guilty. That's an admittance of guilt.
That's a hot topic, is hush money.
Yeah.
And the things you can put under contract to keep them quiet are kind of unlawful. They break law a lot.
Yeah. I mean, I understand that some people like, if somebody comes at you with a false, like, if I'm a well-known figure, I get the other side of it. Like, if I'm a well-known figure and somebody's like, hey, like, you did this thing, and I'd be like, no, I didn't. They're like, well, unless you pay us money, I'm going to go to the public with this information that could damage your reputation.
Yeah.
I understand, okay, in that situation, yeah, so I guess that is an argument to what I was just saying, that there would be a reason to pay if you hadn't done anything.
Yeah.
But, like, if you're going to court over but that wasn't what happened, because they went to court to claim of what they did. And so she didn't pay any money to keep them quiet for what they did. He didn't pay money to keep her just from, like, revealing this information. This was money that was earned in a lawsuit about what he did. So that's the main difference.
So was it like a settlement?
Yeah, it was a settlement.
Yeah.
It wasn't like, oh, shit, like, I don't want my reputation out there, so I'm just going to pay this money for whatever you have to keep it quiet. Because people have done that. There have been cases where innocent celebrities and politicians or athletes, whatever, have paid money to people, to random, and it's horrible what these people do, because you're extorting money from these people for 15 minutes of fame.
I mean, with the president, that was like a consensual hush-hush, but it was still like, your president gave people some hush money.
Well, that's also different, because what he didn't just give her hush money. It would have been one thing if he said, okay, we'll give you this money as long as you don't go to the public with this. What he did, though, him and his lawyer, Michael Cohen, hired a hired muscle to threaten this woman. And she was walking her daughter along in a stroller, and some guy came up to her, and basically, I think what the exact line was like, he's like, oh, that's a cute little daughter, like, it'd be a shame if something happened to your mother. So he threatened the life of this woman and her daughter to keep her quiet. That's what people are missing. When everyone talks about, like, oh, what's the big deal? Like, presidents have always cheated on their wives. Like, yeah, okay, you know, fine. That's fair that people commit adultery. Like, you know, I'm not going to hold somebody's, like, head over the fire for that. But it's different when you're hiring somebody to threaten and intimidate and silence another person. That's just wrong on a human level, and people should be angry. It's weird when people say, like, oh, I don't care, because it's like, why don't you care about this? This is something that happened. This is horrible. Shouldn't you expect better from a person like that, or from a position like that? You know, we don't have any standards anymore. I mean, Yeah. Well, speaking of fucking, sorry.
How can you have a standard when it's covered up? That's the real question.
Yeah. Well, how can you have a standard when when you can just easily cover it up?
I mean, like, if money solves all of the issues, like hides things, then.
What are you really gonna get out of this?
Yeah.
I don't think it does. I think money is a band-aid on a bigger problem. It's like we have all these big issues. We pay money to keep it on. Like, if you're talking about like sexual harassment, and you're like, oh, some guy paid money because he was sued of sexual harassment. It's like, okay, so that guy won't do that anymore. But what real difference are you making?
I mean, he's not going to jail for any of these issues. He's like, the only thing he has to lose is his reputation.
Yeah.
But there's a lot of people that don't care about, like, did this guy do something? They're like, yeah, he settled. And then it's just like, oh, well, I mean, I'm still going to hire him because, like, I don't care.
Yeah, well, it depends on the situation. I mean, like, it depends on who the person is, what they did. Some people, it does have a bigger detrimental effect on their life. And sometimes it's unfair.
Yeah.
Sometimes, like, like, let's, because I actually want to talk about this. Let's talk about, like, speaking of, like, fucking celebrities and all that shit. Because I don't usually, like, care about any of that stuff. I'm more of I have other interests. But, like, this thing that happened with James Gunn really just infuriated me. Are you familiar with what happened with him? So James Gunn is a director, writer who I've been following for many years. He used to work with this company called Troma, and they made all these really, like, B-movie, like, really trashy, stupid fucking films. But they were fun and, like, an entertaining movie.
One was, like, Sewerman or something.
The Toxic Avenger.
There we go.
I don't think he worked on that one. He did write this movie called, like, Tromeo and Juliet. And it was like Romeo and Juliet, but they were like,
but more gross.
Yeah, let's combine more severed limbs and cannibalism with that, and it's like, yeah. So I love that kind of stuff. It's like shock value stuff, and it's fun stuff to watch. It's fun to watch with your friend when you're passing around a joint, and like, so he used to be like a pretty edgy dude, and then his first film he made was in 2006 called Slither. And that's an excellent movie. It's like a kind of a 50s homage movie with these like bugs that attack the city. And then he made a movie called Super, which I like even more, with starring Rainn Wilson, Dwight from The Office, where he plays a superhero, but it's like a realistic version of a superhero movie. And I really loved. He had like a very and in real life he was like kind of this like. He had this, like, outspoken personality. He would say all these, like, really fucked up things. And I remember seeing him all these interviews back in the day. He would do, like, he would say shocking things, but it was, like, funny. He's a shock jock. That's what these people do. And they're pushing the envelope because it's nice to be able to say something that other people find, like, we all have these restraints, and it's refreshing to see somebody go past these restraints.
Right.
So the most recent thing that everybody knows him from is he made the 2 Guardians of the Galaxy movies.
Yeah.
And last week, there are a couple of, like, tweets he made. A bunch of tweets he made from, like, 2007 or 2008 got republished by this guy, Mike Cernovich, who is this, he's one of the members of the alt-right.
Ooh.
He's from Long Island, which I'm embarrassed for. He's not indicative of all Long Islanders, and he's a really racist, sexist piece of shit.
Is he a Nazi?
I mean, he's part of the alt-right, so I mean, he was part of that. He wanted to do the remember, like, last year they tried to do the free speech bullshit week. He tried to do that with Milo Yiannopoulos, and he's associated.
That was the Milo event.
Yeah,
people were.
Yeah, he's associated with him and Richard Spencer and all these people. He's, part of that.
Richard Spencer is KKK, right?
Yeah, well, he's a white nationalist, which means white supremacist. It's just a prettier word for that.
Yeah, I mean, I never like, the KKK, the white supremacy, that's been in the country for, since its creation,
Yeah.
right? Like, that's always been there as counterculture to the ending of actually, it was before slavery. It was kind of like a domineering terrorist group that would go into non-slave states, cross borders, and kill a bunch of people.
Yeah.
So
It's good they call them terrorists, because that's what they are.
I mean, I still think they're terrorists. I don't think they should be here. Another thing, though, is like when you have people calling themselves Nazis and like and having swastikas out. I mean, those are the people we fought in a world war, and it's just like, so that's not being a traitor.
You are a traitor.
You're a Nazi. You're a traitor to me.
Yeah.
I mean, both my grandpas fought in a war, and then you're here with your fucking swastika on whatever part of your body.
Yeah, exactly.
And I'm like, what are you doing?
You can't be a patriot and also be a white supremacist, because we literally fought against that in a war. And that's the thing, though. White supremacists, white nationalists, alt-right. Literally, if you look under the definition of all of those things, they're literally the same thing. They mean exactly the same thing. There's no difference between a white supremacist and a white nationalist. There's literally no difference at all. If one of our viewers thinks there is a difference, please email me at gofuckyourself@gmail.com. That's one word, gofuckyourself@gmail.com, with a difference, but I don't think there is any difference.
There's barely a difference.
No.
I mean, you could argue KKK is they hate Jewish people, they hate Christian people, and they hate black people. And
I mean,
think
who
that's
doesn't?
what the
That's what
the three Ks mean in some weird I don't even know what language that is. Latin?
I don't know. But
I don't know.
So anyway, this guy Mike Cernovich, who was part of this, he uncovered all those tweets, all these like jokes that James Gunn made about rape and pedophilia, jokes, and he posted that, and immediately Disney fired James Gunn from making the third Guardians of the Galaxy movie.
Which kind of freaks me out a little bit, because Disney, when you're doing your background checks, how could you not find that, but this white nationalist found it?
Well, also, what he did wasn't wrong. He has nothing to apologize for. If you look at actually who James Gunn is as a person, obviously I've never met him personally, so I can't speak for like, oh yeah, he's a good tipper. But every interview I've seen from him, he's actually really progressive in terms of women's rights and gay rights and all of that, faggy horse shit. He's actually very progressive and cares about the same stuff I care. I care about women's rights. I care about gay rights. And so we actually agree on a lot of this stuff. And occasionally, these things are very serious and they're very depressing. And occasionally, you need you need to be able to make jokes about things, to be able to, just loosen up.
So it wasn't really like a joke about hating anyone. It was more a joke that was more so ironic.
Yeah, it's just it's not a big deal, man. I never understood how people can get so easily offended by jokes. I never understood that. Because I'm always able to tell the difference. I can tell when someone's trying to be humorous and when someone's just intentionally being mean.
Yeah.
Like the guy Milo, when he called Leslie Jones a gorilla, he went on and said, "Oh, I was just joking." And it's like, no, because there's a difference. You're intentionally trying to hurt somebody's feelings and then claiming it's a joke, when what James Gunn was, he was just making a joke about the thing in general, and the jokes are so ridiculous that it's it's hard to be angry because he's not trying to hurt anyone.
Yeah. I mean, that's the whole issue, is that a joke stops being funny when it's so targeted towards somebody. I mean, who are you trying to make laugh? Honestly.
Yeah. I mean, and it's you got to look at the context of the joke, and it's just the fact, it's kind of the self-righteousness that kind of sickens me today about where we are as a culture. I find that people are incredibly self-righteous, and just the way they respond to things is just so bizarre, and like everybody's acting like they're constantly being watched, and they have to be very polite about what they say, and so people would be like, oh, I would never make an off-color joke about that. It's like, really? You would never in a million years just like with your friends when nobody's around just like crack a couple of jokes? Like, get out of here. I don't believe you. You know?
Yeah, people take way too much offense to a lot of things, and they try to separate themselves as much as possible. And right now, separating yourself by race or saying like I'm whatever race, you're white, you hate me, kind of a thing, or whatever. Because I remember I went into Penn Station, right? And I was going down an elevator because my girlfriend needs the elevator. And we had a nice day in Central Park. We were coming back. It was great. We did nothing. We just had a picnic.
Nice.
But anyway, we were coming back, and a guy gets on, or the elevator gets really full, and two people try to squeeze on. It's a guy and his daughter. They're both black. And immediately, I'm like, you know what? I'm like, let's make this work. So he doesn't even realize this, but his bag, he doesn't have like enough room for his bag because it would hit his little daughter. He doesn't realize it, but I'm actually like this, holding the bag the whole time for him, and like he didn't realize it for a second. Then he's just like, oh shit, yo, thank you. And I'm like, yeah, man, I got you. So I'm holding the bag, but this one woman is like getting like really squished, and when he stepped on, he was just like, you know, trying to make room, and this person was saying like there's not enough room, she's getting squished, and like he like didn't understand she was getting like squished, and he thought it was like a race thing immediately. He's just like, oh, you're white, you don't want me and my daughter on, or something like that. And I was just like, it's really not that. It's that this little tiny lady's getting squished, but like eventually we made room.
Right.
So like while I'm helping this person, I'm also thinking like, you know, you're on the thing. You don't have to be angry.
Yeah.
Especially in front of your daughter. I don't think you're setting a good example.
No.
Like, so like, you know, at the end of it, like, I give him back his bag. He's like to my girlfriend, yo, stay with this man. And I'm just like, thank you. And I'm just kind of like, yeah, I did a good deed.
I don't need your approval.
I'm just like, I did a good deed, like helping him with his bag and stuff. But at the end of the day, it's just like, calm down a little bit. You made it onto the elevator. Yeah. I helped you get on. We helped make room. So this one person didn't want you on. It was because she was getting squished. And like he was like, after we got off, he was like yelling at her, just being like, this is New York, you can't be this way in New York. And it's just like, dude, that wasn't the issue, man. Like, yeah. I'm sorry, like just forget about it, have a good day with your daughter. Like,
it's because that idea of like, oh, this is a racist white guy is so like implanted on his brain. This is like a kind of his go-to reaction. Yeah. And it's like people a lot of times do that. They'll just immediately go to race. Or they'll try this thing. Like, you ever hear this thing and they'll be like, well, as a white man, you don't understand. I know a lot of people probably rolling your eyes, probably go, like, 'cause, you know, I mean, it's hard to be like white people don't get enough, you know, like white people don't get enough fair treatment. Like, it's hard to go at that angle.
Yeah, it's hard to
because,
say that.
Like, without sounding like a complete asshole. I realize that. I'm very self-aware. But there are certain cases when it's just like, why does it immediately have to be about me being a white man? Why can't it, like, I've had arguments and, like, people have told me, like, that's a very white thing to say. And I'm like, why? Why can't it just be my thing to say? Why can't it be, like, you know, or, like, that's a very... Well, now it's not even about white. It's about being a man. Like, that's a very male-oriented point of view. And I'm like, okay, but, like, how does that... Like, you're saying as if I'm a man that somehow takes away from the point of what I'm trying to say.
And, like, if you really want to talk about, like, men's issue with, like, anger and things like that, because, like, that's statistically, like, you know, way higher than women. Mm-hmm. If you really want to talk about that... then you got to understand that with a country with like a 50% divorce rate, a lot of kids don't, or a lot of young boys don't see their fathers.
Yeah.
And if there is like a violent generation of men, well, I mean, there's a fatherless generation of men too.
Yeah.
So like, I mean, if you want to, if they want to talk about that, and then kids getting raised on the internet, raised on like hardcore porn and like disrespecting women, that's something we can talk about.
Yeah.
But to not bring up like the causes of why some men might be rapists or murderers, you're not really talking about like the generation or just like what happens in a young boy's life, which like there's lots of people going through transitions, like women becoming men, and I feel like maybe they did understand that, maybe they did have some alienation, but I feel like a lot of them never experienced what it was like to be a boy, and I'm sure they're aware of that. But like, you know, as a boy, like we're hitting each other in the balls, we're beating the shit out of each other,
calling each other faggots and stuff.
At one point I almost joined a gang in middle school. At one point I was my middle school was pretty shitty.
Yeah.
And it was
they would go around stealing candy bars from groceries.
It was way shittier before I got there. I'm so glad they moved. There's a lot of people from New York City that came into the system here, and it really fucked things up. I remember one of my friends, Elton, he was there a year before I was there, and he said this one kid brought bricks in his bag because he was going to get jumped, so he used the bricks in his bag, and he just swung his bag at like 3 people so he wouldn't get jumped.
Jesus, like Full Metal Jacket. Just
like... Yeah, exactly.
Oh
like,
God.
there was a point in history where a lot of people moved away from this town and started going into the first suburb ever created, which I think was Levittown.
Yeah, by Arthur Levitt.
Yeah, and they moved out of here because
That's
of
like in the early 1900s.
Because of those issues. Racism might have been a little bit about it. I personally, I think it was a big thing, but I mean, if there's like a lot of people that are causing a lot of violence, then that's another thing.
Well, Levitt was a huge racist. I mean, when you think about Long Island's breakdown demographics, he used to use that as a way to, what's it called? He would make it harder for black people to live in his towns because that would decrease the property value and people didn't want to live in towns filled with black people, and that's why Long Island today, as a direct result, is so segregated.
Yeah.
But I think that's a really good point you make about how we interact as young, because whenever people talk, and I don't mean like all people, I mean like a lot of people, like a lot of people in like the mainstream. I don't mean like the mainstream. I just mean like a lot of people when they talk about.
I have seen some shit when I was young. I saw one person I knew rob my friend. Oh, actually, I'm sorry. Let me rephrase that. I saw one person that I knew go with my friend and rob a kid right in front of a group of people. And those guys ended up serving time for that. And it's the weirdest story. It's like someone will know somebody because they're popular, and this popular guy like wore the mask and everything. But come on, we know who you are.
Yeah.
Like we know
we see your back of your face.
We know who both of you are. You guys are being fucking idiots.
We know what the back of your head looks like. You fucking moron.
So they went to this kid who like just got like to the school. Like he was a 7th grader. Maybe we were 8th or 9th or something like that. And like across the street, I see them go up to this guy. He thinks they're playing around. They're not playing around. Eventually they get him to the ground, threaten him with like something. Could have been a knife. And then they take his phone, and then suddenly that joke that he thought they were playing on him wasn't a joke. And then my friend at that time, his shoe fell off, and he was running away without a shoe. And like, I hate to say like I like aided a crime or some shit, because you know they were caught, but I had to give him. He came back, and I had to give him his fucking shoe. And I'm just like, I really don't want to give you your shoe right now. I want you to go home shoeless, because you just robbed somebody. But I mean,
did you? No, you gave him back a shoe.
No,
You gave him back the show, didn't
Hey
you?
man, I mean, look, this dude's got a knife. I'm gonna
I
I'm gonna
get
aid
it.
him in his shoe.
Exactly.
But like after that point, like we just stopped talking, and like I just saw some dumb things when I was a kid.
I mean, kids are terrible. But like getting back to what I was saying, so like when people talk about this, because now everyone's realizing, okay, like sex, like there's the differences, like how men and why we had like this kind of fucked up sexual relationship in this country. And people handle it with kid gloves, a lot of people. They're like, well, men are bad and they're sexually deviant and women are perfect angels that just want to, and it's very like
just
black.
want to cuddle.
It's very black and white, but it's not really like that. So let's get into more of it. And the reason that a lot of, like not all, but some guys behave inappropriately is because a lot of men are kind of clueless about what women want. Because like when I'm not, like, some men act like very confident and they'll go up and they'll kind of like grab a woman's tush or something and they'll just be like very openly flirty and touchy with girls, and girls will respond to that and they'll say, ooh, like I knew this one guy like when I was in college and he would act like that. What people would consider sexual harassment today, he would do this to this like girls, and he ended up getting laid a lot. And so like somebody viewing that who doesn't get laid, they would think, wow, so this guy does this thing, I should act like that. And maybe girls like a guys who are aggressive. I'm not justifying like sexual assault or harassment, but sometimes people act in ways that are disingenuous to how they actually are, because they feel like it's a way of being more attracted to people. And a lot of times what I've seen women who I know women who will talk about what they want in a man. They'll talk about like, I want this sweet guy who is like the most generous kind, but what they'll end up dating is the complete antithesis of that, and it'll be like this like really sexually aggressive macho asshole. And it's like, so what you're saying you want and what you actually have are two different ideas.
Yeah.
And that sends confusing signals to a lot of guys. I'm not blaming you, but like that's the reality of how it is.
I want this confident macho person, but I also want somebody to share their feelings, and you want it at the same time.
Exactly.
Which is impossible.
Yeah, you can't have those two different ideas. You can't say like, you can't complain that no guys ever come up to you and talk to you, and then also like think that all guys are like creepy and like we'll just do that.
Yeah, and it's the loud ones that get noticed.
Yeah, exactly.
There's like a good Facebook video, or it's somewhere on the internet, where it's like, why do I always get the worst guy to date, or something like that, or why don't I ever find a nice guy? And it's like, because the ones that are the loudest, that you see all the time, that approach you, those are the shitty guys.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
That's the ones that they respond to. If you go to any bar, I mean, like, there's more places to me than bar. If you go to any bar, who does the really hot girl go to bed with? Does he go to bed with the nice, charming young man? Or does he go to bed with the fucking loud, big, like, aggressive, tattooed dickhead? Which one? It's always letter B. So it's like, what are you supposed to do as that guy? Do you then just hopelessly just do this stuff, even though? But then that's what makes my kind of like eyes roll when they say like, why are guys so aggressive? It's like, because that works a lot of the time. That works, and so we don't, and so that's why some people act like that. Not all of them. There are some people there are a lot of people that are just legitimately fucking creeps and rapists, and I'm not making any justification for this stuff. Anybody with a brain could be able to detect that. What I'm saying is that there are different reasons, and it's more complex than people would think.
I have a really interesting question for you, actually.
All right.
So like,
I would hope so.
There's these there's like,
if you had a boring question, that'd be boring.
There's these like homicidal killers that are coming out in the teenage era, as we see, and they kill a lot of people because they can't get laid. So fuck them.
Yeah.
But
obviously,
it's an interesting point that a lot of my friends have been saying.
Talking about the incels.
I don't know. The group on Reddit.
Yeah, the incels or whatever.
Apparently, yeah. Apparently that's been part of all of this in the background.
Yeah.
I mean, it makes a lot of sense that there's some groups out there that are like helping fuel anger for violence. I mean, that's what ISIS does on the internet too.
Yeah.
But what I was gonna say was, a lot of people say, well, a lot of these guys, some are born with autism. They can't really help it. They don't understand social interaction. Some of them don't have their original parents, so they're kind of become like just socially awkward just because of their upbringing or how they were born. But anyway, my question is, would legalizing prostitution help alleviate some of these issues when these boys turn 18? Or would it just make things would it just make them more agitated anyway? Would it help? Would it just keep a killer from killing people? Would it not matter? I'm so confused.
The short answer, yes! I've been thinking about this. I debate this for a long time. The long answer, yes. Yes, it would. Because I've gotten into debate. I have a lot of, friends. I'm a really likable guy. No. I know some, feminists, and I'll debate them on this. I 100% think that prostitution should be legalized. Because, yeah, you're right. There are people in this world who are virgins. I know some. This whole podcast is just gonna be me talking about people I know. But I know a guy who is a virgin his whole life, and he's so kind of
bitter.
No, it's unfortunate because he's such a sweet person.
Yeah.
But he's been deemed societally unfit for sex, for intercourse. He's been deemed by so much of society as unfuckable, like that whole Louis C.K. bit that he had.
And that's something that both men and women judge is oh, he's a virgin. And it's just well, maybe he just maybe he just wants to be with one person in his life.
And maybe there are people who are so, or not even just virgins, but there are people who are disabled. There was a movie called The Sessions a few years ago. It's pretty good, and it was about a guy who had an iron lung, and so he had a prostitute. And of course, I think it should be legalized for these people because it's not fair. So it's like for people that don't think it should be legalized, like I was saying, Louis C.K. had a whole bit about that people that are just deemed unfuckable by the whole society. And it's what do you do with these people? Do you think it's fair to tell these people, oh no, you should keep trying and failing? Because when you say that, when you actually tell those people that, you come off as a very entitled and from a place of privilege. Because,
that's true.
Because sexual being even moderately attractive is a privilege. You didn't do anything to deserve to be good looking. You didn't earn your fuckability. You never went out and earned the fact that people find you attractive. You were just born that way. And so for you to tell other people that they shouldn't be allowed to have sex with a prostitute is really kind of an arrogant thing to say. And I understand what some people are saying, well, what if these people abuse these prostitutes?
Yeah.
And I think that's a problem with a lot of people at the moment.
Yeah, what if the teenager who was going to kill a bunch of people just ends up killing a prostitute?
But think about it. If you're most of these people we're talking about in this scenario, autistic virgin types, I don't think those people, just because somebody can't get laid doesn't make them an aggressive homicidal maniac. Maybe that person's not looking to hurt somebody. He's looking to make love. That's legitimately what he's looking to do. He's looking to put his penis in a girl's vagina and thrust up and down until a bunch of liquid goo comes out of him. That's what.
Definitely.
That was the least sexy way to describe sex ever.
That's the way it's done, right?
So why what's a legitimate reason why that kid shouldn't have a prostitute? I mean, I don't, because some of those people say some extreme things that are government should assign them sex workers, and no, that's fucking horrible. But just the fact that prostitutes should be allowed to go out and they're doing, these guys are either disabled or not good at having sex.
Yeah, I mean, Howard Stern paid someone who was a dwarf, I think. he had like some disabilities too. He gave him some prostitutes in Nevada because there's like one place in Nevada where that's legal, and I think that's it. I think that's where prostitution is legal in America. Just this one specific place in Nevada.
I didn't even know it's legalized in Nevada.
Yeah, well, I don't think it's
Nevada,
I don't think it's statewide. I think it's like a county or a town.
I don't.
It's very like it's like very reclusive.
Okay.
Secluded.
I think that would get rid of a lot of violence and a lot of sexual tension. And I think it comes from a deeper way of the fact that we have so much taboos on sex in general. And I think a lot of that comes from these arbitrary rules. A lot of that comes from religion, I find. And like I have no problem if you're religious or whatever. But like I think that it's been bad for what they consider sex, because they make sex out to be like this other special thing that you have all these feelings and emotion. And when you think about it, sex is just like a natural body process. It's no different than taking a piss. It's really just like, it doesn't need to be made. You think two chimpanzees are thinking about like the right mood and lighting and everything? No, they just go out and they have sex with each other.
So you're saying that, sex is one thing, but love is something separate from sex that can be included with sex.
But it's not necessarily the same thing.
Yeah, because it's not like that for everybody. Like, there might be a guy who just works out because he doesn't, like, care too much, or maybe he has some insecurities, but he works out in order to get that. He doesn't work out in order to get love. He works out to get fucked.
Yeah, exactly. There's different levels of sex. There's sex that's made out of lust, which is what most sex is. And then, like, the 5% of sex is sex when you're actually really into the person you're having sex with. Or maybe it's higher with people that have normal feelings and stuff. Like, for most of the time, I feel like sex is just what two basically animals are doing because it's their bodily function. And the fact that we place taboos on it, like, you have to be a virgin until marriage, it's like you're restricting your natural, you're restricting yourself from what, like, you're naturally supposed to be doing. And that's a lot of the problem. Think about the workplaces. Like, work, like, because that's the big thing now, is because all these sexual harassment things are coming out. Everybody wants, like all these work, there has to be no sort of, like, sexuality in the workplace. But it's like, that's impossible, because there's always going to be there.
Yeah, I think people say, I think that's that guy from Canada, the professor, Jordan Peterson.
Oh, yeah.
He said, he made this whole big thing about how...
That guy.
Yeah. We'll talk more about him, because I want to hear your opinion on him, because, like, he's kind of a little too, like he's always on edge, because he keeps saying, like, I'm afraid I'm gonna, like, say the wrong thing that I don't mean to say, and I'm just like, well, calm the fuck down.
Yeah.
But I guess there's a lot of pressure on him. Anyway, he said, why would women wear lipstick, high heels, low skirt at the workplace? And he's just kind of like, maybe that is for you, but it's also, those are all sexual symbols.
Exactly.
They make you more personable to other people, and other people find you attractive and are willing to do some of your work for you or let you slide more based on that attraction.
Yeah. And it's like, well, also the workplace itself is so sexual. Literally any place, but especially the workplace, because any place where men and women are together is sexual by nature, because there's always the possibility that could happen. And especially so you go to a job, and I'm talking about, like, the office people, like, the people that work at an office. You see the same person every day. You see the same girl. You get to know her a little bit. You get to talk. Oh, one day you make a joke and she laughs and it's inappropriate, and you start sharing personal information. Ooh, one day she comes in. That's a new perfume you have, huh? And you begin to get these, like, sexual attractions for somebody, and that just happens naturally. And then so trying to be like, no, you can't express this.
There's gonna be body cameras on everybody in the workplace, and then there's gonna be a dick alert system, and it's gonna beep every time you get a boner. So eventually, in the workplace, you'll never have a boner, because this alarm system is your biofeedback telling you no,
you
don't
can't
do it. Don't do it.
Say you can't express your
And
feelings.
there'll be a female version too. Stop getting wet. And we'll just like
it'll immediately
slap her in the
dry up.
face.
It'll have a sponge right there and right below her labia.
Right, and then we'll
soaks up the pre-cum.
It'll give you an electric shock every time.
Yeah,
you have a thought about a coworker.
But that's the thing though, because they legitimately there's some places that make it like there's our rules now that you can't ask out a coworker. So it's like, what are you supposed to? Are you supposed to hide this feeling? Because that makes you depressed. That makes you feel bitter because you should be able to openly express your feelings without fear of repercussion, as long as you do it in a respectful way, and don't just go up to a woman and start grabbing her and be like, you know, if you just
someone had like one of those people that got ousted for sexual harassment. He had a button in his office.
Oh, Matt Lauer did.
Matt Lauer. He could press it and lock the door behind someone. And I guess it was like in case. It was in case like somebody came in trying to shoot up the studio.
Well, apparently, it's to keep them from leaving.
Yeah, I mean that's the real reason why he had it. But like to me, that's why he would like. That's how he would get away with it. He would say like, okay, this is for my safety. This is to help me stay safe. I mean, I didn't hear that detail. That's what I'm assuming. But yeah, that apparently was the real reason.
Yeah. Well, that's just creepy. I don't support that because that's you're literally keeping. You're keeping somebody from leaving the. That's like Dr. Evil right there. Yeah. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like that's like some weird shit. But I'm talking about like if you go up to somebody and you just like tell that girl like, listen, I really have feelings for you. You shouldn't have the fear of being fired. You should be able to openly express yourself. And it's like, listen, I work in commercials. You know, I do this stuff, and when you're in that industry, people are very open with each other. It's different there than it is. People like talk about some weird shit. Like I've had people like my own age talk with people that are like 25 years older, literally talk about like doing coke and like going to strip clubs and stuff. And so like occasionally when you're in that kind of environment, you might say something and somebody might find it inappropriate. But that doesn't necessarily mean that you're a bad person who like was like trying to hurt somebody. That means that you might have crossed the line. But that doesn't mean that you should immediately be fired for it. And I feel like we're at that age where everyone's walking on eggshells now because everyone's so afraid of how they might be perceived and it makes people weird, and it's just so odd, and it gets kind of boring when there's no sexuality or sexual tension. It's fucking lame. It's like, remember we used to go to Malloy College, and I remember thinking that was a big thing I noticed that was different than Oswego was there was no like, the guys didn't go off to any of the girls and try to flirt with them. It was weird.
It's like when that's a big difference between like a commuter college, not that they didn't have dorms, and then like a bigger college with like super dorms. Like people learn more independence and they're in a new environment, and you know what, I gotta say, sometimes that environment scary as fuck, but sometimes that environment can also be
it's okay to be
really
scared.
Beneficial.
Yeah,
depends on how you're scared.
Yeah, I mean, no, but like being scared, being uncomfortable, and being offended sometimes are okay, and that's what people don't realize is that sometimes when somebody says things and you're a little uncomfortable, it's not because what they're saying necessarily is bad, but because it's a new idea, and sometimes new ideas make you a little bit uncomfortable, and you have to kind of like. Kind of realize.
Yeah, and you know, sometimes people get so uncomfortable, they drink like crazy, and like, then that.
Or when I'm not uncomfortable.
That ends up with like, you know, a lot of these issues where somebody says I was like date raped, or I had to drink a lot because I wanted to have sex with him, and it's just like, well, if you had to drink a lot to have sex with someone, it's obvious you didn't want to do that in the first place.
So you should have just said. No, or
you should have just said no, thank you, and then left.
Remember that guy?
Don't drink.
Who's that guy? Indian comedian from Parks and Recreation. Oh, Aziz Ansari. Remember that story that came out about a few months ago that he went out with this woman and she apparently said it was like the worst night of her life because he kept trying to have sex with her, but she said that she gave him a lot of non-verbal cues that she didn't want to have sex, but she never outright said, I don't want to do this, but she would be like, but like,
Yeah.
listen, maybe the guy could have like read you a little bit better, but like the guy's not a monster. You never told him. Like, what is he supposed to read your mind and be like, oh, this is what you want? I thought because we were making out. Like, if you're making out with someone, why in the fuck would he ever think like, oh, she doesn't want to do this? Like, what do you expect from him? What do you expect from these men?
I guess that's part of the autism thing is there's so many like nonverbal signals, and like I definitely think that if you do see like somebody unhappy while you're into something, you definitely should stop. But I think that's part of the upbringing of people is they don't understand those cues, and they never like interact with people anymore, so they don't understand those cues. So I think I do think those cues are important, but I do think that people should understand that if you should be very direct with someone, and I think that while I think it's kind of like, you know, men have trouble picking up on that stuff, I think women have trouble just saying no.
Yeah.
And I think they have trouble like being more direct. So I think both sexes have a lot to learn.
Oh yeah.
And a lot to teach their kids, so shit like that doesn't happen.
Well, I think a lot of this too is that men and women the parents need to do a lot better jobs. I'm gonna call out all the parents.
Oh
parents
yeah,
suck.
Parents
they really suck. Like in terms of like how they're men, because like adults give girls until like all the way through college you should be women, boys and girls should be feel good about themselves, and so from the moment they're young, like girls have given all this like positivity and but like you're perfect and you're great,
but they shouldn't get everything they want.
Well, they shouldn't get everything, but also it's the fact that same stuff should be applied to boys. Boys are never given this sort of feeling of like you're great the way that boys are constantly told when they're feeling sad to like, I mean not constantly because there are like progressive, refined parents out there, but there are like a lot of parents who revert to the same sort of bullshit 1950s crap of, oh, you know, suck it up and real men don't cry, and you know, like they work out their differences by fighting, and what's going on? Okay, but like they're constantly being told to hide their emotions and put everything into a little bottle. And, like, you're only able to do this, and that, and you can't do this because that's seen as gay or, like, feminine. And, like, when they're doing that, they get really messed up in their head, and it makes their self-esteem feel really bad. And they want to, break out of those tiny little boxes. And a lot of times it drives them crazy. And that's why most men are more violent than women. It's because you have this, that's one of the reasons. You have all these circling self-esteem stuff, and if we just teach men to feel better about themselves, and also women to feel better about themselves, and stop, you're right, stop giving them everything they want. Stop having a fucking Sweet 16s for your daughter.
I'm not going that far.
I would.
Yeah.
Sweet 16s, I hate them, and I hate you if you have a fucking Sweet 16 for your daughter.
I like my sister's Sweet 16.
Okay, that's true. My sister had a Sweet 16 too.
I
don't hate the parents. I love my parents.
Maybe a humble Sweet 16.
Yeah, like a humble party
where you're not like taught your whole life that you're like
great,
the greatest.
Yeah, it's always I love my parents, so I don't blame them for having a Sweet 16 for their daughter, but I would never do that because what I feel like it does is it makes you feel like you're like you get all this accomplishments for what? Because you didn't drop dead for 16 years. It's like but at least when no, seriously, why should you have this huge party? Like, the thing about a kid who has a bar mitzvah, that kid had to work his ass off every day for like a few years, learning all this stuff.
Learn a new language.
He worked his ass off. So at the end of the day, he gets a party. He gets a party as a reward, though, because he worked his ass off. He deserves a celebration. What did somebody, and it's not just girls, that like anybody that has a big party for when you're 17, like, go fuck yourself. You didn't do anything to deserve this stuff. That's why we have all these rotten, entitled, fucking brats out there that are growing up and acting as if the world owes them an apology and owes them everything. And that's why like tying this all back together, you have raise a bunch of entitled assholes. They grow up thinking that James Gunn owes them an apology for making a joke 10 years ago. You see how I brought this all together?
Well, like, who's even, like, angry at James Gunn? Is it young people or old people?
It's the same stupid assholes on Twitter who complain about everything. People act, though, as if we'll get back to the Sweet 16 thing a little bit, because I want to really focus on it. People act as though the world owes them an apology, and it doesn't. Nobody owes you an apology.
I think it goes back... back to that divorce rate. I think people aren't teaching their kids anything, and those kids feel entitled their whole lives.
Yeah, they do. They just they grow up and they act like everybody that they speak to has to have the same opinions as them. Yeah. And if they don't, or has to think the same way, and if they don't, instead of like having a rational discourse, they lose their fucking minds and they go ape shit. It's the same people I worked with at the Playlist. I could tell they all had these very like spoiled upbringings. And, like, you know, like, when the whole thing with the Me Too movement came out, when Matt Damon had an interview, and it was a pretty rational interview, it was like, listen, okay, like, yeah, it's good that rapists are getting put away, but there's a difference between somebody who makes mistakes and somebody who's a genuinely bad person, a legitimate point. Did people, even if they disagree with him, did they say that I work with, did they respectfully say, like, this is why you're wrong, or did they analyze the substance of what he was saying? Or did they result to, like, childish hysteria? I mean, this guy that I work with named Charles, he wrote this article about it. Instead of just simply stating what happened and whether he agrees with it, he said that this guy was mansplaining, and, like, he was like, he just doesn't get it, and it's like, you sound like a child.
Man.
You're not able to have a conversation. You're just immediately...
Mansplaining, there's a real explanation to mansplaining. A man will be like,
because you're wrong.
a man will be like, yo, do you know Slurpee? And a girl will be like, yeah. And a guy will be like, do you know, like, there's a Coke Slurpee? And she's like, yeah. I feel like mansplaining is like the whole concept of it is like a guy just like trying to like say like, hey, do you like understand this? Because you're not giving me any feedback. You're just saying yes.
It's a crutch.
And I think that happens to both sexes. So like you can't really say it's mansplaining unless it's like some like big shot boss who thinks girls are dumb who are working under him.
I had a woman mansplain to me season 3 of Mad Men the other day on the fucking train ride back from Manhattan. I swear to God, they tried to mansplain a season of they're like, well, do you understand why Don is... I'm like, are you seriously like mansplaining this to me? You're a feminist with an NPR tote bag. Who the fuck do you think you are? Like, asshole. But, like, yeah, so they... Well, it's a crutch. Yeah. It's a when people say they're mansplaining, what they're essentially saying is, I don't have a legitimate point to say, so I'm just going to use this term, and that, like, puts an end to any argument you have. It's like when somebody says, like when we were talking earlier, we're like, well, that's a very man point of view. It's like, you don't really have... You're not dissecting what I'm saying. You're just like immediately putting that, and you're like, that's like your trump card. Like, oh, I win because I use this term. Like, no, you didn't.
Oh, shit, he's got Exodia.
Yeah, he's got the mansplain 5000. And so getting back, like, that's what I feel is like we're losing this sort of like middle ground, because like I'm a liberal, and I'm like, I hate Trump, and I'm a liberal in the true sense of the word, where I feel like people should be completely more free with their language and their sexuality and just their opinions. And I feel like a lot of liberals, the politically correct liberals, are very much against that sort of like, no, there is no middle ground. It's either my way or the highway. It's like either everything is bad that they do, or there's like, there's no, like, middle ground. You can't be like, well, what about this? Or anything. They're like, what? You're not getting the point. It's not about that. And so, like, with James Gunn, like, this woman, I posted on Facebook about it. Why? I'm just screaming into the abyss about this stuff. And my friend Lauren commented on it. It was a really smart girl who I know in the past. And she's like, well, you know, rape jokes are never funny. And to that, I say, no. What you mean by that is I don't find rape jokes to be funny. Because you can't tell somebody that they don't find something funny if the person is laughing. You understand? Humor is subjective. You don't get to decide that something is universally funny or not funny. That doesn't make any sense. It's like saying something isn't sad.
Would you say things are not funny if they're based on a true event?
I mean, it just depends on, because it depends on what it is you're doing. I mean, like, some things are, like, really fucked up, and there's a certain time and a place when things are inappropriate, but they can even be inappropriate and be funny. And I'm not even...
Like, sorry to interrupt, but the
back and forth,
the Amazing Atheist had this one video about, I think, this show called The Talk, in which this woman cut a dude's penis off and put in a garbage disposal, and then the women were laughing about how it would be like dancing around in there, and like that's a real event that was turned into a comedy, but this guy has no penis.
Yeah, no, there's an element of truth and sadness to it.
Yeah, so that's like crossing the line. Like, what is the line?
I don't think there is one. I think it's all arbitrary, honestly. I mean, like, when you think about it, people make jokes about everything nowadays. And, like, Larry David was on SNL, and he made a joke about the Holocaust. Think about it. He was on a national network, and they decided... the joke was hilarious, and he's hilarious.
That's the big one.
And so it's like, if that's okay, then fuck your rape jokes are never funny bullshit, because I guarantee one of those is worse. The Holocaust is worse. You can't say your thing is the worst thing that's ever happened to people. Because there's no, like... You can't just automatically say that everything else is funny except this one thing that more applies to me than other people. Because that, like, anybody can say that. I could say, listen, Holocaust jokes are never funny because I have relatives who died in the Holocaust. It's like, well... But what about slavery? People died, why is that okay?
So, yeah, I mean, people were making jokes since the Black Plague. Jokes are the way people deal with things.
They're the way people deal with things. That's the thing, is that, like, if we remove people's ability to laugh at things, we're getting a very unhappy culture. And I think that happens to a lot of people. I think people are very unhappy these days because people feel like they're afraid to say how they really feel. I mean, there are certain, if you feel, if you're, a racist or an anti-Semite, you're a piece of shit. I'm not saying that. But what I'm saying is some people are afraid to criticize certain groups or certain things without having this immediately harsh backlash. You can't criticize, you can't say that there's a middle ground with this whole sexual harassment, that there's, a lot of different things and components. And because people will immediately jump on the bandwagon. It's very self-righteous, and it doesn't really solve anything. It's more so for people's public image, and there's nothing that happens as a result. And so what they're doing, because they realize that liberals have become sort of afraid of crossing any lines, is that these people on the alt-right are using that to their advantage. They realize that people that oppose them, such as James Gunn or whatever, they can find these things about them. Like, oh, you might have said something 10 years ago, and they use that, and now all of his friends, and now everybody jumps against that person because of what this person might have said, even though that has nothing to do with who they are. It's just like they'll immediately distance themselves from that, and they use that to their advantage to create this divide between people. And a lot of liberals, or the people that, in my own party, are not realizing this, that they're using this war against us.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I have seen some people say that all people who have killed or mass murdered were all liberals. There's a big list that they'll bring up that will say all these people were registered as liberals or Democrats, and I'm just like,
first off, yeah, no.
Well, yeah, I mean, sure, of course. The Democrats used used to be the
Conservatives.
the slave owning states.
Well, that's before they switched sides. I mean, people are idiots. They'll still use that side. Well, the Democrats founded the KKK. It's like, yeah, they switched sides after World War II when a lot of people were upset with FDR's New Deal programs that helped the poor. A lot of conservative Democrats became Republicans. Same with the 60s Southern Democrats. They became conservative because of the civil rights. They don't...
I mean, if you're a liberal that shoots people, I mean, you're obviously not for freedom. So,
yeah. Well, you're a bad person if you shoot someone regardless of your political party.
But it's like you're out of the political party once you shoot someone.
Yeah, it's not based on any opinions. I mean, like, it's not, you know, like, you can't blame... First off, I don't know that more liberals have shot people like conservative. I feel like that's, like, some half-assed bullshit thing that somebody probably went to, like, one of those dumb conspiracy websites and then just Googled I'mRight.com and found some stupid thing that somebody took 5 minutes to make.
Literally, I'm right.
Yeah.
I'm on the right side.
It's I'm
right.
That's what they do, is they come up with these dumb opinions and then they just Google things to confirm what they already pre-believed and nobody learns anything. And that's what these conspiracy websites do. So so you can make up anything. Yeah, liberals committed 9/11. You know, you could say any horse shit, and like somebody will take a video clip of me saying that, and they'll use that as proof to make their point. And it's just like nobody does any research.
Yeah, I mean there might be like a program one day that sorts through your audio.
Yeah.
Excuse me, your audio file, and literally can find every word you said and then make kind of like a soundboard for you to say it. Like that's an eventuality that's gonna happen. So like one day you're just gonna be like, Hitler was great.
Yeah.
Like something like that.
Yeah, exactly. You can recontextualize anything. I mean, but like it's this fact that we have this sort of war on like comedy nowadays. People view people that make offensive jokes as being like that's wrong and that's like as like morally wrong. I've read several articles like where like one woman, this woman Lindy West, wrote an article, Why Men Aren't Funny, last year. And the reason that she wrote that article, like she was trying to be shocking with the title because Christopher Hitchens wrote an article a number of years ago called Why Women Aren't Funny. But like her...
So she's already late to the party.
Yeah, exactly. You're already late to the whole generalizing the genders thing. But, I mean, the articles are very different in their tone. Also, Hitchens' article is... Not to say one's right or the other, because I don't necessarily believe that you can say that. But Hitchens didn't actually mean women aren't ever funny. They meant the culture of comedy is more... towards men's plights than women's plights, and they find it easier. They find that men are naturally more crass, and it's easier to relate to that on that sort of level.
Yeah, and I think it's because when we're at the age of 6, we start hitting each other in the testicles.
And that's funny to us. And there's a level, and what he argued, and like, listen, I think that women are funny. There's so many women that are funny, and not just funny looking. There are many women, but like, they're like, men find horrible things funny. And there's no reason. Well, I have a sick sense of humor. Sometimes, like, I'll, like, you'll have those, like, thoughts that, like, oh, this is all pointless. And it's just, like, you ever, like, with your friends, and you're just thinking, like, one day we're all gonna be dead, and, like, it just kind of makes you laugh. It makes it, but it shouldn't make you laugh, but it makes me laugh, because it's just, like, that's the joke.
Yeah.
That's the ultimate joke.
Yeah, and then you have a lot of female comics that just talk too much about being female when there's nothing really funny about being a man or a woman. It just is.
I mean, there's some stuff. I like you can make jokes about like your periods and shit. And that's funny.
Yeah, like I remember there was like one female comic. She said like PETA person like threw blood on her coat, and she's like, what did that animal ever do to you? Or oh shit, I forgot the joke.
Yeah,
we're gonna have to restart.
This is why Matt doesn't do open mics.
Yeah.
But I mean, yeah, so like there's a difference in why some people tell comedy. I do believe most comedians.
Oh, I remembered it.
Okay.
So this woman was saying she got this. She was wearing a fur coat. PETA person splashes blood on her. And the woman was just like, who had to die for you to get that coat? And she was just like, my grandma. And like, that's an example where it's just like, that's just comedy. It's not about your lady parts. It's not about your PMS. And I think that's the stereotypical stuff that holds women back in comedy, because there are good female comedians. It's just like the ones that just like exploit being a woman.
Yeah.
It's the same thing as like exploiting yourself if you're Chinese or you're Spanish. It's like, you're gonna have all these jokes. You're gonna call yourself a beaner. You're gonna call yourself a chink. What the fuck are you doing to yourself and to the culture you're trying to represent? Like, but then a lot of people would say, well, you know, that's self-deprecating humor. That's also something that shouldn't be taken away. And I'm just like, well, you know, that's up to you, but it's who you're representing.
Well, like, you can, and also like you can make, like, there are comedians that, like, you know, like that talk about race, but they have like,
but they're not so self-deprecating.
Well, what they do is they have a point,
or they talk about their
own, have a legitimate, like, a new
experience,
a new idea, or a new thing to say about it. And you think it's like, that's funny. It's also like really true in a way. And every time you like, wow, that's like a new. But like when I went to open mic, and there was like tons of hack comedians there, including myself. And so there is but every hack black comedian, all they talked about was race, and it wasn't like anything like new or like, wow, that's like really like,
that's
it was
insightful.
Every single joke was like, ever notice that black people are like this and white people are like that and blah blah blah. And it's just like corny like 80s humor. You might as well, like, you know, hey, what's the deal with these airline food? Like, you turned race into like a cliche shitty comedian humor.
Yeah.
And
it's like something it's like, give me something new that hasn't been said before.
You shouldn't let the fact, and I get it, because obviously I can't speak from my experience as a black man, you know, because I became white 5 years ago, and
because of the vitiligo.
Yeah, and exactly, it's been a while. So I can't understand what they're going through ever, and I can't speak for that. And so, you know, like, if you want to talk about race, like, go ahead, talk about, you know, it's up to you, man. You can do whatever you want. But I'm saying you shouldn't use it as a crutch for lazy comedy. That's my only point on the matter. You know, I'm not going to criticize how you feel about it or anything. Just, like, if you're going to, don't use it just as an excuse because you have nothing new or original to say.
Yeah, man. I mean, I think 98% of people are extremely, extremely untalented.
Yes.
But then there's those people. Then there's like 1% that make it that aren't talented at all. They're just popular. They're just successful for some reason.
People like the way they speak, or they appeal to a certain audience, and like that becomes kind of their thing. I never thought Carlos Mencia was funny. I remember even back because when I was in middle school when his show was on, and that was like everybody was into it. And everybody would go like, du-du-du, you know, that kind of stuff. And I always thought he was just kind of dumb and not funny.
Well, Carlos Mencia, I think, became successful because we were at a time where people were talking about, you know, Mexican immigration and like 11 million illegals living in the United States. So I think he came at the right time. Mm-hmm. And I think that's how people can get successful, is if they're talking about stuff at the right time.
Yeah.
Like Bush is talking about, you know, they were talking about making a wall during the Bush era.
Yeah, but Bush never...
Because it's too fucking expensive.
Because Bush is an idiot, but he's not as big of an idiot as Trump. And nobody would ever think like, hey, let's go to Home Depot and build a wall. So, like, that's why Carlos Mencia also came, like, he kind of, but what he did was much more sinister, because he's not actually Mexican. He's Honduran and Russian. I mean, Joe Rogan exposed him to be the fucking hack fraud that he is, and, like, after he exposed him, he lost everything. He lost his show, he lost all of his signings, He's been coming up, like, I've seen, like, people post videos of his...
What was his real name? Bob?
Ned Holness. And it's like, yeah, it's like, his name is Bob, but it's like, if you're pretending to be Mexican and saying all these really just genuinely racist things about Mexicans, that's like so...
Mencia, Ned...
Holness. Wholeness.
Wholeness.
Wholeness, like wholeness.
Ned Wholeness versus
HOL.
Carlos Men.
Well, what you're
The guy
doing?
who has been the guy is just one of the most
Piece of
fakest
shit.
comedians to ever
because
arise.
He has a fake name. He's a fake nationality. And a fake material. He stole so many bits, and like everything about him is fake. I feel like somebody's talked about this before. I can't even remember.
A lot of people
I've
have
talked.
talked
So
about
nothing I'm
this.
saying is new. You all know he's fake.
Yeah.
But like pretty much, so like it's not cool because it's one thing if like you just but like he's making jokes about Mexicans, but he's not Mexican. So like those jokes are not cool. And like, well, actually that's not necessarily true because you can be white and make good Mexican jokes, but he's pretending to be Mexican, which is like weird.
Yeah. I just feel like I haven't seen a comedy special in a long time that I've really, really enjoyed.
I mean, I watch the old. I still watch of like I still watch a lot of the new ones that like my guys are all the Cellar crowd. Those were the comedians I grew up on.
Yeah.
Like the first comedian I ever got into was Chris Rock when I was like in elementary school. Even I would remember watching his special and be like, this guy's the fucking shit. And then I was like, I even like a couple of comedians I kind of grew away from when I was younger. Like I was into like Dane Cook and Brian Regan. I don't hate Dane Cook the way other people do.
No, at the time
care.
I enjoyed Dane Cook.
Yeah.
I liked Mitch Hedberg for his beautiful one-liners.
Yeah.
That's pretty much all he was.
He's fine.
George Carlin is a big classic that I love. I love Dave Chappelle. I guess the last comedy special that I loved was one of his ones from the came out New Year's 2018. So I guess that one was pretty good.
Well, when I was 8th grade, I watched Louis C.K.'s Chewed Up.
Mm-hmm.
And that was the first time I ever saw him. And then after that, like, my world changed forever. I was like, holy shit, this is fucking comedy. And then I got into Greg Giraldo and Patrice O'Neill, real comics after
Every
that.
time I think of Louis C.K., I have this, like, awkward, like, story in my head. Like, every time I think about watching his special. Because the first time I watched a special, I was with, like, my ex-girlfriend at the time. She was my ex at the time. And she was like, you ever see Louis? And I'm like, you know what? I've seen a bit, but I never, like, watched a special. But it's just so awkward watching this special with her because she had just asked, she said, like, oh, do you what do you call it? What is it when you do you like hook up with anybody? And this is my ex telling me this. Somebody who I used to actually be in love with, and I'm just like, no, I'm not really like that. And then we watched Louis, and I'm just there the whole time, just like feeling awkward as fuck because I really don't want this person in the room with me. I'm just like, you're
because he makes you feel awkward about who you are, and that's why I love his comedy.
Yeah. Like
he's making fun of you for being you.
Like I'm here with this like I'm here with this like shallow person. And, like, this is my ex, and, like, why are they...
He's not shallow.
No, not Louie, the girl.
Oh, she was shallow.
Yeah, and I'm just like, why am I even here right now? And why is this person here?
Because he's a true comedian. He would make you feel like his comedy was so great because you would watch it and you would relate to it in a way that makes you feel, like, shitty about yourself. And that makes you laugh because it kind of gives you a little bit of humility. And that's what comedy's supposed to do. It's not supposed to make you feel better about yourself. It's supposed to make you like, oh yeah, that's the answer, you fucking asshole.
So needless to say, I was a little distracted with my thoughts when I watched the first
because you wanted to make yourself seem more, like, he did a joke, though, like, about, like, airplanes, like, how people nonstop bitch about airplanes, and it was special hilarious, which was my favorite of his. That was, like, 2009 that he released it, and he was talking about, like, people always like to complain about, like waiting forever at the airport. He's like, well, guess what happened afterwards, asshole? Did you fly in the sky like a miracle? You know, I can't do it, but, like, and he's like, wow, like, I am an asshole, you know, and you kind of think about that, and you have, like, I don't know. So, like, but, like, him and Greg Giraldo were probably my favorite comedians of all time, and I got into them around the same time, and that's when I found out about other of the comedians that would perform at the Comedy Cellar, like Bill Burr, Patrice O'Neal, Jim Norton, Sarah Silverman, all these other people. And, like, I was, like, really into comedy then, and I did, like, my first open mic when I was 16, I remember, like, but I wasn't that good, then, you know. But, like, what I remember thinking about comedy was you're giving a gift to the world, because you're giving them laughter. You're able to, like, realize that life shouldn't be taken so seriously. And, as Matt's body just moves in front of the camera. And so, when you say that people can't make jokes about that, or they shouldn't joke about that, what you're doing is you're taking away people's abilities to enjoy themselves and to not take away things and to not take life too seriously. You're taking that ability away from them. And that's a really shitty thing to do to somebody. And that's the bigger thing, is that nobody's a bad person for making a joke. You don't owe anyone an apology. And stop thinking because you have a Twitter account with 250 followers that some random celebrity owes you an apology, because they don't. Life is not like that. Life doesn't just bow down every time, you know, you get screwed over.
Yeah.
That's why, like, kids don't get it, man. They're so fucking sheltered. I realize I sound like an old man for saying that, for complaining about kids these days, but, like, you gotta change your attitudes, man. And stop screaming out bullshit, because you're making us real liberals look like shitheads when you do that.
Yeah, man. I mean, I guess I don't even feel like a liberal anymore, if that's what being liberal is. I just feel like I'm Matthew, and that's who I am.
I feel like
I don't feel like being a part of a group. I mean, there were people way back in the day, the founding fathers, who said, we don't believe there should be political parties. We think groups should arise per topic, and that political parties are going to drag us down with their affixed beliefs.
Yeah, and, like, I understand that. I understand that feeling, like, because I, too, feel like, listen, man, like, after my candidate gets cheated out of an election, in which, let's be honest, like, he legitimately never had a fair shot, and no sort of Hillary person will ever admit that Bernie was cheated. They'll never take any real responsibility, and then the general message was, listen, suck it up, Buttercup, because if you don't like this, we get Donald Trump. And obviously I would have supported Hillary Clinton more than Donald Trump. I mean, I do. Like, any rational person would. I don't like Hillary, but let's be honest, one's, like, a shitty politician. The other one's fucking the worst human being on the planet. But I feel like that was indicative of how, like, the Hillary camp and, like, kind of those people, they don't know how to talk to others in a rational way that gets them to, like, think, like, you know, that's a really good point. Like, I never thought about that. Instead of, it's all yelling, it's all aggression, it's all finger pointing. You better support me, you fucking piece of shit. Like, I was at the DNC. People were like, oh, you guys, you don't know what you're doing. And it's like, you're not winning anyone over by doing this. And that's kind of bringing back to the point about, like, all these issues before, is when people have, like, a disagreeing opinion, and you immediately start saying they're mansplaining and yelling them and condemning them, you're not convincing anybody of anything. If anything, you're doing the opposite. You're making those people more like, oh, I don't want to associate myself with them. They seem crazy. You're not winning anyone over. You're screaming to nothing.
Yeah, and being louder kind of subverts those voices too, from wanting to say, no, I don't fucking want violence. I don't want you to be this big asshole saying all these horrible things about people. I don't want you doing any of this stuff. And then now we have, like, the what do you call it? The Trail of Tears Part 2, with all of the, with all of the illegal
Yeah,
immigrants
I mean,
going
that was
back.
that's a real issue.
Yeah.
And I know I haven't talked about it all the time. We've been talking about, like, other stuff, but, like, that's a real issue. So when people get outraged at people for jokes that they make themselves seem like idiots, because you're not actually looking at what's important. You're not looking at the fact that, by the way, they're still there. There's still kids in those cages. They haven't all gotten rid of them. And, like, we just kind of gloss over it because we live in, like, a society where everyone has ADHD and they can't focus on one crisis long enough.
Oh, yeah.
So they immediately just forget about it as soon as the next thing is brought up.
What was before that? Guns. That was the thing before that. And
nobody talks about that anymore.
Yeah, because now it's about, families getting torn apart, and that's the current thing, and there's no murders happening, but then there was just a murder, so you can't really say that. There's just news on top of news, and people can't handle 5 or 10 things happening all at once. And honestly,
everybody has to put all their attention into one thing.
How are you supposed to solve an issue if you're just one person? Yeah. What kind of groups need to arise to solve an issue?
Well, how are you supposed to solve an issue when you're constantly
going
around? When you're constantly fucking like, oh wait, no, what about this? What about that?
That's a good thing. Is how do you even solve an issue?
No, you don't. Like, well, I mean, like, here's the thing: is that you have to look at what's really happening. And basically, there is a distinct group of people.
There's like a logistics side to things, like literally, how do you get all these people together to just solve an issue, or how do you get people to focus on 10 or 15 or 5 different things all at once?
Well, you can't, because this country is filled with too many different people with too many different viewpoints, and a lot of these people are just stubborn, dumb pieces of shit, and that's not just me speaking out of my ass. There's plenty of research to support that. Like, people oftentimes don't want to give in at all because they think that that's me losing some of my ground. But the way you don't solve any issues is by constantly like forgetting about them and moving on to the next thing. You're not going to solve guns if you immediately think about this other thing. It's all part of the same problem. Gun violence, and these kids locked in cages, all these things are all tied together because it's one side that's supporting these things and the other is not. I mean, like, let's be honest. These people, when they locked the kids in cages, they looked the other way, and they immediately just said, no, that's okay, and they tried to recontextualize it immediately. That's what Trump does. That's him and his lackeys. They immediately deflect and say that they have like these built-in responses because they know that these things are going to come up. So his immediate response was, well, Obama did this. And then when people actually point out to him that that's not actually true.
Obama did what exactly?
He locked kids in cages too.
Oh, okay. So,
and when they found out that, like, well, there's Trump immediately. No, because Jeff Sessions. Oh, sorry.
I'm sorry, but like there was plenty of cases back to Bush where a lot of these old buildings that were used for like industry, oil, things like that, they were converted to cages, and there were lots of like FEMA camps people were talking about, and conspiracy theorists would see like millions of these like plastic coffins there and say like, oh, they're getting ready for disaster, and like, yeah, they kind of were, and that was the thing. But then on top of that, they would point out that there were these buildings in these like FEMA looking camps, at least that's what they were calling them at the time, and the buildings had like bars with playground equipment in them, and they're like, oh, they're gonna store families in here. So as far as like, did the previous presidents like imprison like children and things like that, there's some evidence that they did, but the thing is that like this is something that's been going on for a long time, and now it's up to this like really devastating point for families because they're starting a mass exodus of these people, that like these families are getting split together, and it's just more than it has been ever, and it's been more public knowledge than ever before, and now it's just something that the public is absolutely disgusted at.
Well, it's also a false equivalency because yes, there were kids that were actually kept in cages under Obama and Bush's presidency. However, there's a big difference because, like, Trump set forth in motion this bill that was specifically designed to separate parents from children. That was the main intention.
I'm saying
Obama's policies, though, and with George Bush's policies,
he increased all of those issues.
But also that was never like that happened. But there was never like the goal of any of those things. Those were fluke scenarios. Like that never happened by specific. Those were like occasionally they would find out like, oh shit, this kid, like, but that was never the intention of what they did. Trump's thing was specifically designed to do that. I'm not excusing what happened in the past, but I will say that Obama never intentionally had children and their parents removed or set forth any bill that would have them do that. That would be a flaw within the system itself.
Why would he separate children from parents though?
Because he thinks that it will deter them from coming. Because they think, because that's his platform, man. That's been since day one. Ever since he announced he was running for president, he said that Mexicans are rapists and criminals. And guess what? People responded to that.
But what's the point? What's the point of separation? What's the whole reason behind why they did it?
Because it's a fucking terror move. What you're doing then is like it's pretty much like making it more serious to them. It's by saying like, oh shit, if we do this, we're gonna like. It used to be like, you know, it would make it seem even more unappealing to people. Even though, let's be honest, immigrating already is a huge hassle, and it's not. You can't just go. People think you could just walk in and become a citizen. When people are stupid, it takes fucking years and years to become it, and there's all these paperwork. And it's just an absolute nightmare. So that was his thing, though. He ran on anti-immigration, which, and let's be honest, it has nothing to do with immigrants or legitimate like belief that the number of immigrants is detrimental to the economy. It all have to do with race, because he never talked about Canadian immigrants or European immigrants or Asian. He never mentioned any of those people. He mentioned Mexican immigrants. It was all about race. Everything he does is about race. And that's like even earlier we were talking about like people immediately go to race and like we were criticizing it, so it might seem weird that I'm saying that now. But that whole thing with immigrants is all about race.
Yeah.
And it might not be for every person, because I have heard people say they legitimately believe that it lowers your property taxes and it increases their property taxes, but with him, it was the fact that he realized that there's a lot of people that just don't like brown-skinned people.
It's just weird because, you know, somebody who's lived here 50 years is kind of an American by now.
They're as much as American as me, and I never understood the hatred towards immigrants, man. I used to work in a catering hall, and they would put the immigrants in the kitchen, and they would be the dishwashers, and they would do all the grunt work, and I remember like thinking like, wow, their job sucks. And they get such little pay, and they would basically be exploited. And, like, I would never have resentment towards somebody for that. Like, they're not harming you in any way. They're people who have a struggle. They have a very hard life, and you know, you should you should want your fellow human being to succeed. What is this desire to see these people deported and failed? Where does that come from? That comes from a feeling of hatred. We should have
inadequacy too. I mean, there's people that like myself, a little chubby and feel a little inadequate, and they increase that over time through their media and through what they see on TV. So somebody is feeding you some bullshit to prey on your inadequacies.
Yeah. And
I do think weight in America creates a lot of inadequacies, because if there's like a 60% obesity rate, people's inadequacies can be played on really easily.
Yeah. Well, yeah, no, people's inadequate. Well, people have this inadequacy about everything, and it's partly due to social media. It's partly due to all these different things. We have these impossible expectations about us.
But somebody is feeding you this, and it's for their own gain, and it could be, you know, a corporation trying to sell you something, or it could be a political power.
Mm-hmm. Any political power, Here's a way to tell whether you're being duped. Any rich guy who tells you you should blame the poor for your problems is playing you for a sucker, you idiot.
Yo, that's the dude.
What do you think? Like, this rich billionaire is a humble, noble guy that cares about your self-interest? Are you out of your mind, you fucking child? It's like, it's so stupid. It's like, yeah, people feel inadequate because a lot of people are, like, kind of, you know, failures in life, and well, at least they feel like a failure.
I think most people
feel like a failure,
most
but they
people
blame.
feel like a failure at one point or another.
So it's like, well, I'm angry. Who do I blame? Mexicans.
Oh, the Mexicans are taking all the jobs that I want, like dishwasher, sanitation, or well, not even sanitation. Yeah. You got to have a degree for that. I'm talking about like cleaning bathrooms.
Yeah. Fucking shoveling dumpsters and stuff. Like, mainly...
Like, all the horrible jobs. Oh, they're taking all my jobs that I want.
Yeah, because I want to... I want to scrub shit out of a McDonald's bathroom for 5 days a week.
Yeah, or even, like work... Like, it's August now. Imagine working landscaping jobs.
Stop blaming people for your problems. And this goes for Republicans and Democrats. You guys are equally... guilty of this, but you just blame different people. Republicans need to stop blaming minorities for their issues. Stop blaming black people as like they get this leg up. Stop blaming poor people. Stop blaming immigrants. Start taking responsibility for your own fucking life. And for the liberals, for the really high, stop blaming men and white men for your problems. Guess what? We're all have the same problems. We all have flaws, and we're all responsible for our own outcomes in life. Mm-hmm. You can't just say, "Oh, well, it's unfair because I'm a minority and the society's unfair, so that gives me free reign to just do nothing with my life, and I get to write it off by blaming it's unfair."
I mean, there's horrible people out there that keep like people's wages down.
Yeah,
that's a fact. I think, like, you know, when you look at the 1980s and then you look at now, the median household income hasn't changed. It's still around 50,000. I think it's gone up 50 cents.
Yeah.
And inflation has devalued money by like 13%. So like you never earned anything for 30 years of your life. You barely got a raise. At least like on average in America, you never got a raise.
Yeah.
And then your money value has gone down. You know, candy bar is no longer 50 cents. It's like $2, right? Something like that. We always go to candy when we talk about this stuff, or milk. Yeah. I'm starting to get hungry. I haven't eaten in 6 hours. Ooh. Oh boy. But anyway, it's like there's going to be horrible bosses that don't pay you a lot, and that's kind of the trend. But it's one of those things where, like, there really isn't many other options for people. And I think I would love it if we, in the future, got more, like, empowering bosses. Or we even became our own bosses, because social media helps people create their own businesses. Yeah. And I hope that one day people can kind of be their own capitalists, that people don't have to, like, because I actually do love the capitalist system, because it means if you work hard as fuck, you can get a large amount of money, but sometimes you neglect the people under you. So if everyone can be their own capitalist in a way, their own boss, you know, that sounds like a nice thing to me.
And I think that, like, you know, I get what you're saying. That's kind of a counterpoint to what I'm saying, that, like, because sometimes, like, there are people who are, like, they're keeping you down. But at the same time, like, I don't know, kind of, like, look to where you got and look to why you are that place. And kind of, you know, self-examine stuff. I mean, I used to, like, when I was a few years ago, I used to blame people for my problems all the time. Blame my parents, you know, they didn't fucking show me enough love, or all this shit. You know, you blame, like, these external factors, and, you know, and I see a lot of people do that, and I hate when, like major publications justify that sort of blaming. But, like, eventually I realized that, like, that can only take you so far, and it really means nothing, because at a certain point, it's you and only you who are responsible for where you get in life. You can decide which path you go on. You decide everything. There's nothing... you have as much power as, like, you know what I mean? You can,
Yeah.
you can, like, yes, I have a leg up from somebody who's dirt poor because I wasn't raised dirt poor. I was raised middle
Absolutely.
class.
Absolutely.
So, but at the same time, that person could, like, that doesn't, if he then doesn't do anything with his life, he can't say, oh, well, you know, that guy had more money than me growing up. You can make decisions to improve where you are.
I think that's like the argument of the glass ceiling, though, right? Is like if you have like very few positions at the top, or let's say you have like positions at the top, positions in the middle, positions in the bottom. If nobody's like moving up, like the next person can't move up. So then it's one of those things where it's like, well, you know, maybe we need to make more competition. Maybe we need people to have like, maybe we need more multiple things instead of multi-conglomerates.
Yeah.
Like maybe we need less monopolies and more people doing smaller businesses. So like,
well, I mean, to do that though, we have to change the whole breakdown of how we do things, and people need to make more socially conscious efforts. I mean, sometimes you need to make sacrifices. Like, don't shop at Walmart. Like, Walmart is great prices. That's why people shop there.
yeah.
And you'll have to spend a little bit extra money, but you go to a fucking, you know, a little mom and pop store and you get, you know, whatever you need there, and you're
Yeah, I mean,
it's about sacrifice. Sometimes you have to make a little bit of a sacrifice.
I was in this business ethics class once, and they had in the book a report about how much a CEO of Walmart makes versus how much a CEO of Costco makes. Now they actually at that time pulled in the same amount of business, made similar amounts of money.
Yeah.
But the CEO from Walmart would make $21 million, and the Costco CEO would make around $300,000 to $400,000, because to that person, that was the amount that they wanted to live comfortably. And I'm sure, you know, if they needed to go somewhere, that was a business expense. So who knows what business expenses they had.
Yeah.
But 21 million versus 400,000 is kind of defining like who's being more humble and who, you know, wants to give their employees more benefits and wants to share a little bit more. Because I mean, as the head of the company, it's your right to, you know, talk about where the money's going, but at the end of the day, there are some things that are just unfair that people will do at the top.
I mean, that's life, though, right?
Yeah.
I mean, like, sometimes, like, people are just shitty, and there's nothing, like, you know, like, but you can't just, like, let that define you. And then that's kind of like what we were talking about before. We have this sort of, like, actually, not really, but, like...
I guess it's like, I guess it's like some people are born with options. They can leave work. Some people have to get new work and get new training to leave their work before. So, like, there'll be people who, like, just are working 24/7, getting no sleep because they have a shitty job and they want to get an education to change that.
But you can. You can do
You
it.
can try.
Anybody, I mean, you can try, and
What do
sure,
you
like,
think
not
about-
everybody's going to succeed
What do you
in
think
life.
about free college? Because
I agree with free college.
It seems like, because I remember we had one professor say you guys should be protesting on the street because every other country has some form of free college.
Everybody does, but, like, I think college should be free. I think college should be for everybody. I mean, I remember we went to college, and there were quite, like, a lot of kids there should not have been in college.
Yeah.
They were, like, just completely uninterested in learning. And it's like, that's where I hate people our own age, because of how sort of spoiled and entitled they became. It's like, you're in a classroom. Like, think about how lucky you are. For instance, you know how many people don't ever get to go to college, don't ever have the means or any sort of support to go to college? So you're in college. Like, you're already a million times greater than some other anybody else. You're in college. You're in a classroom where a professor is teaching you. A professor is teaching you. You get to have knowledge, information into your head.
Yeah.
Like, the fact that gift, that's like the greatest gift anyone can give you. And then so to sit there and say, oh, this knowledge is unimportant to me. I'm okay with the amount of knowledge I have.
And
I'm going to check Facebook. Is arrogant.
That's the
arrogant.
The laptops. There's so much clacking, and the teachers know this is not about fucking school.
No.
This is, and like, I'm
Kids
literally
on Pornhub or something. Maybe I was. I don't know. Make class a lot more interesting.
I mean, it's crazy.
I have the answer.
I'll see people on Facebook. I saw this one kid on Discord, because Discord is like a chat thing for lots of people who like games and stuff.
Yeah.
And I'm just like, well, why the fuck are you here? Like, there were some people
Why are you here?
that didn't let laptops in because they knew how distracting it was going to be. And then on top of that, I'm just like, you know what? Maybe college isn't the place for you, because I don't think it's the place for a lot of people. I think we should all go to technical schools. I think college is designed
most people
to eat up your money.
Yeah.
And I think technical school might be a better solution for a few people. Some people, like nurses, they need to go to college.
Yeah.
But
well, it's like
for us, like for our media stuff, I mean, I'm very happy about the classes we took, but maybe a technical school would have been better for us.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, no, though. I would say no, not for me, because I like learning.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't go to college for a job. I don't care about.
Well, you didn't even know what you were going to do yet.
Well, like that. Well, I did. No, I did.
You kind of learned it at college.
I mean, I started college like a long time ago when I went to Oswego.
I didn't. I came in undeclared, did English for a while, wasn't sure where I was going to go, and then I found like the media program. So I didn't know what I was going to do, but
I feel like a lot of kids, though, you should only go to college if you enjoy learning.
Yeah,
I have always loved learning. I love just soaking in knowledge. I love having like intellectual conversations with professors and students.
But
a lot of kids don't, though. And
some things were great, but some things were really bullshit.
Well, yeah, but like a lot of kids, though, they have no desire to learn.
Like, I didn't need to take a sociology course from a professor that didn't give a shit about his job.
No.
Like I think some of these
Mike Russo or whatever his name was.
No, but I think like some of the gen ed classes made me feel like I was in high school learning the same things, whereas some other classes like current world history, sign me up. I get to learn about the Janjaweed committing genocide. Like, I want to fucking know about that.
Well, like exactly, it's stuff for its interest, but I just don't understand kids that are like have no desire to learn. It's like because you become really boring and really like you have nothing interesting or substantial to say. It's like you have no facts that I haven't heard before. Nothing, no one new ideas. And it's like, how are you okay with that? I knew a few kids like that. Like I remember talking to this one kid named Mike, who was in our program, and like I was talking about politics. He's like, I don't really care about politics. I'm like, oh, so you don't care about all these things around, like, how? How is this world that you live in not interesting to you? You can't just be non-interested. Then you should just kill yourself because you're providing nothing to the world. You're not helping anybody. You're not doing a service. You're just a boring, uninterested
I think that's the point. Unless it directly affects you, you're not going to care about any of that stuff. And in a way, I agree with that.
Because a lot of kids are afraid to do working class jobs. They're afraid of oh shit, I gotta be a painter or electrician. But it's like, dude, you can, like in England, people in the working class are able to make a decent living, and they're like proud of it. They're like, we're the working class. They're like
working class.
Yeah, they feel good about themselves. Here, you can't survive on the working class, and that's why a lot of those people that would normally not be in college are in college looking for different kinds of jobs.
Well, I think we devalue craftsmanship work because we have so much plastic crap. I mean, even this table, I don't think this is real wood. I think this is plastic.
Oh.
Well, maybe it's real wood. It's thin. This aluminum shoddy.
Yeah, I mean,
gives me shocks in the winter.
Well, when we have erections, I mean that's real wood. So sometimes you need to use. I don't
get my erections from me. I get them from Walmart. I get the plastic kind. I get the new shit.
Save some money on that.
Yeah, save some money on your erections.
You know?
Get some low quality. Like, I mean, look, I mean, eventually it's gonna deteriorate. You might as well just buy one every week.
Mm-hmm.
But that's kind of it. Is like, I was joking around with some friends. We said like, yeah, like my grandpa was a carpenter, and then someone was like, oh, my grandpa was a carpenter too, and then someone was like, so was mine, and I'm just like, yo, you know what would make America great again?
More carpenters.
Get your grandpa.
Yeah.
Get your grandpa and do some craftsmanship.
More people with like things that they can do.
The world needs more grandpas working on stuff.
We need more people doing shit.
So you can sit in an uncomfortable wooden chair. You also need somebody to do upholstery. But
the
skills people are learning are kind of like some of those like really good quality skills like sewing. Like, I don't know how to sew, but I'm gonna ask my someone in my family to learn how to sew, because that shit is important.
Not enough kids have those skills. Not enough kids have any skills or any knowledge. I'm Jack.
I'm Matthew.
Goodbye.